President Donald Trump says he has called off a planned major military strike against the Islamic Republic after receiving assurances that a diplomatic breakthrough is within reach. Now, President Trump claimed that both the U.S. and Israel were poised to strike until other Middle Eastern countries asked the U.S. to delay any attack because of the framework of a deal which had been agreed to. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the latest.
In a post on Truth Social, Trump said Iran and other Middle Eastern countries asked the United States to delay any attack because the framework of a deal had been agreed to. He claimed the proposed agreement would fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end what he called Iran's nuclear threat. Trump added that Israel has joined the United States in holding off on a major strike, while warning that U.S. forces remain locked and loaded should the diplomatic effort fail. Over the weekend, Israel raised its alert level as Trump indicated that new strikes on Iran were imminent, potentially on a larger scale than before. At the same time, an Israeli official told CBS News that Jerusalem has not been informed of any U.S. decision to resume large-scale military action and has not been asked to participate in any new strikes. Adding to the tension, the U.S. Embassy in Israel, along with American embassies in Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Iraq, advised U.S. citizens to consider leaving the region or be prepared to depart if the security situation deteriorates further. Speaking at Camp David over the weekend, Trump accused Iran of acting dishonorably during negotiations and repeated his vow that the Islamic regime will never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon.
Iran is doing very poorly. Just in case you read incorrect stories, they're doing very, very poorly. They're having a hard time. They've been very dishonest. They've been very dishonorable to deal with. But that makes no difference. They're doing very, very poorly.
Officials say Israel remains on high alert and awaiting the president's final decision, while warning that any major U.S. attack on Iran could quickly trigger Iranian retaliation against Israel, even if Israel does not take part in the initial operation.
President Donald Trump is hailing what he calls a historic breakthrough that could disarm Hamas, end the war, and reshape the future of Gaza. But while Washington is celebrating, Israel has yet to formally endorse this plan. The fighting continues, and the biggest question remains. Can Hamas actually be forced to give up its weapons? ILTV's Devo Klein reports.
President Trump says his U.S.-backed Board of Peace has reached a framework that would phase out Hamas's military capabilities, transfer civilian control of Gaza to a technocratic administration, deploy an international stabilization force, and also eventually allow an Israeli military withdrawal linked to verified disarmament. Trump called the agreement a, quote, great breakthrough, saying it represents the first real opportunity to disarm the terror group.
We have an understanding with Israel. Israel is very happy about it. Israel helped us. And they've been very good. They've been very good about it. Most people said that would be a deal that would be undoable. Now, will it go through its ups and downs? It's a very complex situation over there. The people are very complex and difficult. Many cases wonderful. In many cases not so wonderful, but that will be it's a great breakthrough. Nobody thought would be possible to disarm Hamas.
But the agreement has not yet taken effect. The Board of Peace has walked back earlier claims that Hamas's disarmament had already begun, saying implementation is expected to start only in the coming days if all sides do agree. Under the framework, the parties would spend their first 2 weeks finalizing a timetable for Hamas to dismantle its military infrastructure over a period of 200 to 350 days. The plan remains highly contentious, with Hamas insisting it will only surrender its heavy weapons after Israel halts military operations and begins a phased withdrawal. Prime Minister Netanyahu has not yet commented publicly, but did say statements attributed to a senior Israeli official indicate Jerusalem believes the plan does not go far enough and will not withdraw before Hamas has been completely and verifiably disarmed. A senior U.S. official said President Trump would be, quote, very disappointed if Israel chooses not to move forward. The proposal has also sparked political debate in Israel. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has rejected the plan, while Yashar Party leader Gadi Eisenkot says it should be judged by one standard, whether it actually eliminates Hamas's military capabilities and provides lasting security for Israel. The proposed Gaza agreement is receiving growing international backing, with both the United Nations and the European Union urging all sides to move forward with the U.S. brokered plan. And meanwhile, the war continues. Overnight, the IDF and Shin Bet destroyed 4 Hamas weapons storage sites containing rifles, explosives, anti-tank weapons, ammunitions, and other equipment intended for attacks against Israeli troops. The military also said it eliminated a Hamas terrorist who participated in the October 7th massacre, helped kidnap hostages including Noah Argamani and Avinatan Or, and later held Romi Gonen and Staff Sergeant Major Noah Marziano in captivity.
So what's included in the peace deal proposed by President Trump? Here's a look.
The proposed Gaza agreement is built around 5 major pillars designed to end the war, remove Hamas from power, and create a new security and governance framework for the Strip. First, a permanent ceasefire. Under President Trump's Gaza peace plan and UN Security Council Resolution 2803, both sides would implement a lasting ceasefire. An international verification committee would monitor every stage of the agreement, with no phase moving forward until the previous one has been fully verified. Second, Hamas would surrender civilian control of Gaza. The terror group would transfer all government authority to the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, or NCAG. That transitional body would oversee public services, government finances, humanitarian aid, and the reconstruction of Gaza without Hamas control or interference. Third, Hamas would be required to dismantle its military capabilities. The agreement calls for what it describes as one authority, one law, one weapon. Hamas would be required to surrender its rockets, heavy weapons, tunnel network, weapons factories, and other terror infrastructure under a phased, internationally verified process. Once completed, only the new Palestinian administration would be permitted to control weapons inside Gaza. Fourth, an international stabilization force would deploy. The multinational force would help enforce the ceasefire, secure humanitarian operations, train Palestinian security forces, and help maintain stability as Israel carries out a phased military withdrawal. Each Israeli withdrawal would be tied directly to verified implementation of Hamas disarmament. And finally, a multi-billion-dollar reconstruction program would begin. Under international supervision, the Board of Peace and the NCAG would lead the rebuilding of Gaza, restore essential services, revive the economy, and lay the groundwork for a future political process toward Palestinian self-determination. But ultimately, the entire agreement rises or falls on a single condition: whether Hamas is truly prepared to give up its weapons, its military power, and its control of Gaza, because without verifiable disarmament, there is no deal.
Well, now with us, we have Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, who's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and a former IDF international spokesperson, who joins us now to assess whether the latest U.S.-backed Gaza proposal can actually deliver Hamas's disarmament. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. President Trump is calling this a breakthrough, but Hamas is already demanding an Israeli withdrawal before disarming. Does this make this deal basically dead on arrival?
Hi, and thanks for having me back. It's kind of like hitching your wagon in front of the horses, because the logical and legal way that this deal is supposed to develop and eventually be implemented is first disarm Hamas, demilitarize and de-radicalize the Gaza Strip, and then Israel withdraws. And I think that what we can see here on the diplomatic level is that Hamas, probably with Qatari and Turkish guidance and diplomatic involvement here, they're playing for time, and I think they're hoping and betting that they'll be able to apply pressure on Israel to withdraw and to agree to things without really disarming. And a lot of spin, there will be lots of spin. I've already read lots of spin by different players, different people, most of them that will put pressure on Israel. And I think the bottom line here is, how is Hamas going to be disarmed? How can it be verified that Hamas has indeed disarmed from, as Mladenov said, all of the big weapons and even the small weapons, so long-range rockets and the map of tunnels and AK-47s and everything in between. Now, what Israel needs is for that to happen. And what I think Hamas is trying to do is to say, yes, of course, we agree, and then to do what they usually do, which is to lie, obfuscate, and not implement deals, and hope that the international pressure will be too much on Israel. What Israel needs to do is to be smart about it diplomatically and communicate behind closed doors and then officially as well that the strategy is, the answer should be kind of a yes, but the but being we need to make sure that Hamas is disarmed and that it is verified. Before that happens, nothing else does.
Now, I do want to ask you, because a lot of people outside of Israel don't really understand why this is such a key demand for the state of Israel, that Israel's position is unapologetically there can be no withdrawal before Hamas is verifiably disarmed. Why is that so critical for Israel?
It's critical because of who we have on the other side and what their goal is. Hamas is a genocidal jihadi terror organization defined by the EU, UK, US, and many other democracies as a terror organization. And Hamas has not changed its goal, its objectives, or its strategy. And what Hamas wants to do, seeks to do, and aspires to do is to annihilate the state of Israel, kill as many possible Jews, and then destroy the state of Israel. That is not me saying it. That is in all of Hamas's documents. It's in their two charter documents, one from the mid-80s and one from the early 2000s. It's clearly stipulated there, and it's been said and repeated by Hamas seniors many times over, before and after October 7. So Israel understands that. Finally, Israelis, decision makers, military, and I would say everyday lay people understand that this isn't an organization that you can negotiate with. It's not an organization that can be tempered or moderate in any stretch of the imagination. And it's a very binary situation. We understand that Hamas can exist as a political organization, and I think Israelis could tolerate a Hamas if it doesn't have weapons. To be clear, that's also a bad situation because it's a radical, oppressive, very medieval kind of organization where there's no rights for minorities, there's very little rights for women, and it's a very brutal society. But that's more of an internal Arab issue than something that relates to Israel. Where it becomes Israeli business is if this organization has weapons. And that is why Israel is so adamant about Hamas being, as the letter says in UN Security Council Resolution 2803, the first action item is Gaza is to be demilitarized and de-radicalized. And I think Israel was very right to ask and insist on that being the number one action item, because that is square one. That is ground zero. From there, good things can happen if Gaza is de-radicalized and the military is dismantled. If it isn't, then eventually, again, listening to what Hamas says, they will launch October 7 again and again and again until they're successful. So when people ask themselves, why are the Israelis so persistent about Hamas not having weapons? That is the reason. We know who we're dealing with on the other side. They're a binary, as in yes or no, genocidal jihadi organization. And the only way that there can be stability for Arabs in Gaza and for Israelis is if Hamas is out of power and out of weapons.
Now, before I let you go, I do want to ask you, part of this plan calls for an international stabilization force to help secure Gaza. Now, given past experience in the region, like in Lebanon, for example, what reason is there to believe that an international force would even be able to disarm Hamas in the Gaza Strip?
Very little, to be frank, and I think Israelis have seen many disappointments of international intervention, whether it's UN-sanctioned peacekeeping forces in Lebanon, in Syria. There have been various degrees of failure and inability or lack of intention to actually implement their mandate. UNIFIL is perhaps the worst example. UNIFIL had a very strong mandate. They could have prevented Hezbollah from taking control over southern Lebanon, but they were weak, they were intimidated, they lacked political will, they lacked leadership, and we found ourselves with a militarized southern Lebanon in violation of Security Council Resolution 1701. And there are other examples where Israelis have been disappointed. High hopes in international intervention intervention and peacekeepers on the ground that eventually led many Israelis to the understanding that if we want security, we need to ensure it ourselves. So I think we're in this situation, Israel is in this situation because we came up short in terms of getting the job done ourselves. Had Israel been able and willing, the IDF been able and willing and directed to do so by the Israeli government to actually finish the job by ourselves, then that would have been probably the best military solution. I don't think it was feasible diplomatically and internationally and politically, and that is why Israel is in the situation where we have to make do with an international stabilization force and a new type of governance allegedly in Gaza. For sure, it's imperfect. The track record going into this is not a good one. And we can hope, of course, and I think Israel should try to create the conditions for the international stabilization force in Gaza under the Board of Peace to be successful. If it is, that would be a great achievement, and it would spare Israel the need for sending Israeli soldiers in to do it ourselves. But at the end of the day, if we're realistic about it, the chances of that happening are relatively slim. But of course, Israel has to participate in this international charade, if you call it, or diplomacy, if you want to be serious about it, where we have to go through the motions, hopefully see it succeed, but be ready for its failure and then continue fighting against Hamas until Hamas is defeated.
Well, we do have to leave it at that, but I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the broadcast, Jonathan Conricus.
Thank you.
75 years ago, a bold idea helped build a nation. Since then, Israel Bonds has helped power growth, innovation, and resilience across Israel. Generation after generation, investors have turned values into action. Now, it's your turn to be a part of the next chapter. Celebrate 75 years of Israel Bonds. Invest today at israelbonds.com.
Israeli residents of southern Israel voiced concern and pessimism after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that Israel and Hamas had committed to a phased disarmament agreement in Gaza. The overall sentiment was that Hamas could not be trusted after their attack on Israel on October 7th.
You know, when terrorists promise that they will stop killing, but almost the only issue on their belief is wiping off the Jewish-only country in the world, it's a kind of a lie that you tell to yourself so you can sleep better at night. We did it for 20 years. We told ourselves stories. It was our hopes, and we hoped that our dreams will come true. And it all blasted on October 7th.
הם יחזרו שוב, זאת התוכנית, הם יחזרו שוב. ואנחנו, גם אחרי 7 באוקטובר, מסרבים להקשיב. מסרבים להקשיב לאמת שהם צועקים? לא, אנחנו נוציא אותם לעבודה, יהיה שלום, יהיה פרנסה, יהיה זה. שקר שאנחנו מסרבים להקשיב לו.
We don't think this agreement will happen because we don't believe Hamas will do it. They're lying. They want to continue to kill us as soon as possible.
In Israel, everything can change in an instant. So when a crisis hits, Hadassah hospitals move units underground. Maternity wards, cancer units, ICUs, ensuring our life-changing care continues. Soldiers are saved, civilians healed, but more underground facilities are urgently needed. Please visit Hadassah.org and give today, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Hadassah, life-changing.
Amid the ongoing ceasefire in Lebanon, the IDF says it delivered a major blow to Hezbollah's underground infrastructure in southern Lebanon, destroying a strategic tunnel complex that's built over the last 2 decades. The military says forces destroyed key sections of a massive underground command network in the Beaufort Ridge area, about 6 kilometers from Israel's northern border. The tunnel complex served as a main headquarters for Hezbollah's Badir unit, which the IDF says was planned and funded by the Islamic Republic. From the site, Hezbollah directed attacks and launched dozens of drones, explosive UAVs, and anti-tank missiles towards Israeli communities and IDF forces. The military says troops spent weeks securing the area, clearing the tunnels, and preparing them for demolition. The IDF says it remains committed to the ceasefire in Lebanon, but will continue to eliminate any threat to Israel's northern communities and its forces. Over the weekend, anti-terror operations continued in Judea and Samaria. The IDF say forces arrested more than 200 wanted suspects in recent days. The military says those detained include Hamas operatives, suspected terror inciters, an alleged attack plotter, arms dealers, human smugglers, and a suspect accused of manufacturing explosives. Troops also seized weapons, a drone, explosive-making materials, and tens of thousands of shekels allegedly intended to finance terrorism, while destroying 5 explosive devices. The IDF adds it has mapped the homes of 2 terrorists responsible for last weekend's attack, with demolition procedures now underway. 50 years after the daring Entebbe hostage rescue, Uganda has honored the Israeli commander who gave his life leading the mission. Uganda's Chief of Defense Forces, Major Muhoozi Kainerugaba, has unveiled a memorial to Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Yoni Netanyahu at the old Entebbe Airport Terminal, where he was killed during the 1976 hostage rescue operation. Yoni Netanyahu, the older brother of Prime Minister Netanyahu, was the commander of the IDF's elite Sayeret Matkal unit and was the only Israeli soldier killed during the operation that freed more than 100 hostages held by Palestinian and German terrorists. General Kainerugaba said the memorial honors Yoni Netanyahu's heroism and also symbolizes the growing strategic partnership between Uganda and Israel. The memorial marks an extraordinary historical reversal. 50 years after Uganda's dictator, Idi Amin, sided with the hijackers at Entebbe, the country is now honoring the Israeli commander who led one of history's most daring hostage rescue missions ever. And finally tonight, a remarkable natural spectacle has transformed a creek just outside Jerusalem into what looks like a scene from a fantasy film. Millions of long-jawed spiders have spun giant webs that now cover trees and bushes along the Sorek Creek, creating a rare ghostly landscape. The phenomenon appears every few years during the summer when a combination of natural conditions and nutrient-rich water leads to a surge in mosquitoes, the spider's main source of food. As the spider population explodes, they weave enormous interconnected webs to trap their prey, blanketing the vegetation while the stream flows beneath. Before we get the full weather forecast, a heat alert is going across the country here in Israel. The country is in the grip of its most intense and prolonged heat wave of the summer so far, with expected temperatures expected to peak this weekend. Authorities are urging the public to stay hydrated, limit outdoor activity during the hottest hours, and check on the elderly, as well as taking extra precautions to prevent wildfires. Relief is expected early next week, but hot summer conditions will continue across most of the country. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside steady temperatures with highs of 43 degrees Celsius or 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and keep up with us on social media. That's ILTV_Israel on all platforms. You can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.
I'm Devo Klein, and you're watching ILTV News. But instead of just watching, you can now get the chance to access ILTV at its fullest capacity. Become a member on our ILTV YouTube channel and unlock insane benefits like priority comments in the chat room and even the chance to chat with me personally about anything you want. Register as a member or upgrade to an insider. But if you're really feeling fancy, you can subscribe as an ambassador. Unlock ILTV's premium content and the chance for a special Q&A with not just me, but any of our ILTV staffers. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your full potential with the ILTV membership. Don't just watch the news, get behind the scenes, join the conversation, and become part of the ILTV family. Click join, and I'll be waiting for you.